World Whisky Review, brought to you by me, Man in the Sands. Come and join me. Hats off, game on.
Arran, of many stags, the sea strikes her shoulders. Companies of men can eat there. Blue spears reddened among her borders. Welcome to Season 2 of World Whisky Review with me, Man in the Sands. That was a 13th century Irish poem about the west coast island, Arran. Now, there's so much to talk about with regard to the distillery, its processes, its history, and the island itself. We cannot possibly do it in one tasting review. So we shall revisit looking and tasting and reviewing a different Arran whisky later on in the series. But we are today looking at the first of 3 episodes of Scottish Single Malt finished in port wine casks. So now let's consider the island itself and what makes the distillery special within the wilds of the west coast of Scotland. Arran lies to the west coast of Scotland, viewed from the coastline of Ayrshire and often referenced as the Scotland miniature. It has a microclimate. The north is a craggy, rocky environment. The south undulating pastures. The south was used to having illegal distilleries, the moonshine and lag, where now is the second distillery focused on the peat expressions for Arran, is where the last legal distillery was closed in 1837. So why in the 90s did they choose the north of the island and Lochranza? It was due to Loch na Davy. Loch na Davy giving a volume of water with a quality pH and mineral content that supported the fermentation process. The second master distiller of Arran is James McTaggart, who is now the Director of Productions and Operations. And he tells us that due to the slowest production distillery process, there is so much of a higher contact with the copper pipes that it results in the fruity notes. So what does that mean to us? Well, before we get to the tasting, let's consider the topography and geology of the island. It has a history of Vikings and Celts. It's a geologist's wet dream. Even the Highland boundary fault line means that the north of the island would fall under the Highlands, the south of the island would fall under the Lowlands. So when we're considering the whisky we're tasting today, which comes from Lochranza in the north, are we talking a Highlands whisky or an island whisky? Well, I don't care. It's Scottish whisky, and that's why we're here. It's a Scottish single malt finished in port wine cask. So let's get on with the nosing and the tasting. You know, if you've been through season 1, that I like to consider the bottle, the branding, everything about it. So here we have the bottle. Now, I want you to look at the colouring. There is no caramel added. This is natural. It is non-chill filtered, unchill filtered. That means when you add the whisky to water and to ice, it clouds. That's natural. That's fine. Some purists like to think that we should have chill filtered, so it's artificially produced to make sure it doesn't cloud with water or ice. Folly. I'm very happy with unchill filtered. The colouring is coming from the port wine cask finish. Look at it, it's so enticing, it's glorious. And then look at the statement that the label, the packaging, the bottle is making. I think it's saying, I am Arran. I don't care about a 19th century distillery. I know what I am and you want me. Well, yes, I do, Arran. But before we get there, wait. Oh, who needs a sound effect? That's glorious. So on that note, hats off, game on. Now, let's nose the whisky. Firstly, this is my glass for neat as naked intended. Add the dram. Wonderful. Remember, we're not handling or thumbing, fingering the glass, we're trying to just hold it at its base. How do we nose? If you'll recall, gently. This is a no age statement, 50% volume, single malt, matured for 8 years in traditional oak casks, finished in port wine casks. What does that mean to you? Well, when you're wanting to nose it and taste it, 50%, which Arran traditionally does a higher percentage volume on its whiskies, means you need to be gentle to your nostrils when you're when you're nosing. So, on the nose, gently bring her to. Take her away for a second. Bring her back. Where are we on that? And then final for me is to release the heavy notes, if they're in there, and typically they would be with a more peated and smoky whiskey. We'll do it with this one because it's complex. Just tip the whiskey and back. That releases the heavy notes over the fruity notes. Goodness. And what are we nosing? Well, for me, it is fruity. It's slightly nutty. And I would like to go for stewed apples. It's not too sweet, but it has that fruitiness. It's not sugary yet. It's not caramelly. Is caramelly a word? It is now. It's not caramelly. Stewed apples. That's what's coming into my nosing. Now, let's taste it. And remember, if you're tasting whiskey, as opposed to just drinking it, you should masticate it. It should go through the mouth and let it go from the front to the back and under and to the rear and swallow and hold and then release. So, Sláinte. Glorious. Glorious. Goodness. So with a high alcohol content, it is fizzing on the lips. Not something you'd experience necessarily when you're just drinking it, but with the mastication, it comes through. But there isn't a taste of alcohol. There's a taste of flavours and whiskey. Now let me think about this. It's gone down and it's glowed. It's the stewed apples going inside on a winter's day that warms you. My grandfather loved stewed apples. It has a little sweetness, and that's the port wine cask coming through. But it's very much stewed apples. Again, I go on about this. Stewed apples with a slight nuttiness. The finish is long. It's wonderful. In fact, wear a cardigan. As you are as sure as it will be, it's going to warm you up, and it will surprise you at some point. It become toasty. Well, that's what this whiskey does. It's toasty. It warms you up, surprisingly, but it's subtle about it. It's just giving you a little massage and rub. Now, I can tell you my lips have subsided. The middle of my tongue was just enjoying a very free movement and light on it. And the rear, the palate has gone down. The finish, wonderful. Not what I was expecting from a 50% whiskey, I must tell you. Incredibly smooth, incredibly delightful. And that sweetness does help because the dryness of the oak is not there that you find in some other whiskies. Now, we must move on to a drop of the Holy Spirit. Now, if you recall, it's only a drop. Cold, fresh, water filtered, a drop. Can you see that, the cloudiness? That's because it's not chill filtered. Now, Sláinte. It's got a dollop of cream. Stewed apples with a dollop of cream. Oh, that's how I liked my stewed apples. My grandfather never added the dollop of cream, but I did. It is refreshingly light. On the nose, much easier and fruitier. We're adding a little bit of a drizzle of honey into the taste. The dry nuttiness has been lifted. Oh, honestly, wonderful. Now, rather than glowing off the diaphragm, it's more here, but it's not sticking, it's not burning, it's just tickling. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Oh, just as stewed apples with a dollop of cream tickles away. Now, of course, we have to taste the whiskey on ice. So, big cube of ice, removing the water content of that because it's melted just a little bit under the lights. Now, here we are. Gosh, that surprised me. That has really surprised me. For one, I like it. I wasn't expecting that. I'm not a big ice and whiskey fan. What it has done, it's changed it incredibly. The complexity of this whiskey is wonderful. This has brought out a heather, fruits, a little bit of cherry. It's brought it out and brought it to the fore of the mouth, on the tongue, as opposed to at the back. Well, I must say, that surprised me. And I would welcome you trying each. However, I know you're going to push me for a recommendation. My recommendation, despite the dollop of cream, is, for my mature palate, naked as nature intended. However, for your palate, I do recommend trying at least once a drop of the Holy Spirit. And certainly if you're in a humid and hot climate on the ice, it's going to be wonderful. It actually turns it into a lighter, more fragrant, in fact, dare I say it, a Highlands coastal whiskey. On that note, it's time for me to leave you and for you to go and enjoy everything that makes you happy in life and to stay safe and positive, because I know it's a difficult time for a lot of people. We're part of a community. Please do like, subscribe and share to support the channel. I welcome your comments, and equal to that, I salute you. So I'm going to enjoy my Arran NAS, no age statement, single malt, finished in port wine casks. I'm going to consider the 13th century Irish poem and what they were thinking as they explored that area, because it's so rich with the heritage of the Celts and the Vikings. And I'm going to get excited about episode 2, looking at Talisker and its port re-expression. Talisker being north to Arran, still on the west coast in the island of Skye. So for episode 2, I can't wait to see you again. It's lunch. Woohoo! Loving it! You love yours. Goodbye.